Welcome back to the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. I am Garret Price, and I am joined by my good friend, Connor Rogers. Connor is one of the foremost experts on the NFL draft. Everything he puts out, I enjoy listening to, reading, and you can find him all over the place. You'll hear him on the Stock Exchange podcast. You'll see him doing stuff with Matthew Berry. Connor, before we get into talking about these running backs, just real quick, what are you doing right? You're all over the place, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. The first time I ever did a Dynasty League was because of you, which is very, very funny looking at it now. I was late to the party.
That's awesome.
And something that I don't know how now I do redraft, and I kind of roll my eyes. I'm like, oh, man, this lost its luster. So, yeah, a lot going on, and this time of year it starts to turn down. I do Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry and Jay Croucher. That's my full-time job with NBC, because even when the fantasy season ends, I go full NFL draft for NBC. Trevor and I with NFL Stock Exchange and PFF, we never stop doing the draft. We start summer scouting, usually the beginning of June, and then we go right up until the NFL draft before we get a little vacation right around this time of year. For fun with SMY, I do the Mets pod because, I still am a diehard baseball fan. And then I do Jets pre- and post-game. So it's been busy times. It's all good things. I'm really fortunate. But at the end of the day, man, the draft is the nitty-gritty for me. It's what I love.
Well, you do a fantastic job at it, and I know you've been doing it for years for a lot of different very reputable places. So it's always awesome to get to have you on a show, get to talk to you a little bit, hear some of your insights. And today we're going to talk about the running back position, both how it looks like from a dynasty landscape, but even from an NFL landscape. It was a really odd year compared to what we've seen, and we know that the NFL overall had seemingly been devaluing the running back position, but this year in free agency we saw a lot of guys get good contracts in early, and that led us to believe that we've been talking about this running back class maybe not being quite up to par with some of the others we've had recently, and it seemed like the draft capital really kind of indicated that as well. On day 2, we only had 4 guys go, only 1 in the second round, 3 in the third round. So let's kind of cover those guys first. Jonathon Brooks, when you look at Jonathon Brooks and what he brings to the table, he was the only guy to go in the second round. He went to the Carolina Panthers. Was that justified in your mind? Was he worthy of being the top running back off the board? And how is he a fit for them and for Dynasty?
So he was in a cluster for me, the way I did this, right? I had Trey Benson, Jaylen Wright, Jonathon Brooks in that order, but I had second-round grades on all 3 of them, and they were just in this cluster together where there was some things I liked about Benson and Wright a little bit more than Brooks that we'll get to. And then to me, you had this second cluster of third-round guys where I had 4 in that group: Tyrone Tracy, Braylon Allen, Blake Corum, MarShawn Lloyd, and then, you get to what I would just consider just throwing a ton of darts on day 3 or role players, things like that. And it didn't surprise me that Brooks was the first running back off the board. I think that, before he had the ACL tear to end the season, you see the explosive playability. To me, he's somebody that the running style is pretty, right? He kind of can glide through and cut through, and he has these sharp cuts. And I compared him to DeMarco Murray when I wrote him up. I thought that's who he reminded me of. And I think with Brooks, what's interesting is he goes to Carolina, right? And they basically bought an offensive line, especially the interior of the offensive line. So you think that unit's going to be better. This is somebody, to me, that, and you can say this about 95% of the running backs in the league, the blocking up front will really, really matter. This is someone like sharp cuts, natural feel. I love the acceleration in the outside run game. I thought he knew how to run skinny on the inside run game. He's slippery in one-on-ones. I don't think he's somebody that grinds out extra yards consistently with lower body strength. I was always surprised when people kind of glossed over or were like, yeah, he also runs hard. And it's like, he's fast, and yes, he runs hard, but I don't see him carrying piles, falling forward. Like, NFL tackling is different than what he faced. I thought at times he was a little over-patient, waiting for the perfect opening. So my confidence level here, at least out of the gate, isn't sky high. Like, Carolina was a dreadful offense last year. It has to be better this year. The offensive line has to be better. He is coming off the injury where I do think you got to be a little bit patient. Once again, there was things about Trey Benson and Jaylen Wright that would have me take them over Jonathon Brooks, but when he is healthy, he's still in that cluster, and you have to like the backfield that he's going to when he is healthy, because honestly, what in this group scares you in terms of actually getting play time? He's by far the most talented in that backfield from day one.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it is. It was a hot mess last year over in Carolina, and so you're hoping for better things. Let's get to the second guy, and it sounds like we actually had the same top running back in the class. I had Jonathon Brooks second, but we both had Trey Benson as the top guy. Almost made it into the second round, but he ended up being the second pick of the third round. He goes to the Arizona Cardinals, and a team that has a running back that's a solid guy established, but he is getting up there in years, 29-year-old James Conner. What are you expecting out of Trey Benson? How's his fit in this offense? Because I'll be honest, even though I think all of us were hoping one of these guys landed in Dallas, this was one of those spots that I actually really liked.
I love this one, right? I mean, obviously we see eye to eye on the player. When you're looking at it from a dynasty perspective, it's funny to me how often we lose sight of just talent. I think people get so fixated on opportunity, and I understand that, but you still have to have a lot of talent. And with Benson, he does have a little bit of a blend of the best of both worlds. James Conner is a severely underrated player in this league. I mean, it felt like he was almost written off this time last year, and he ends up running for over 1,000 yards. He always seems to find his way in the receiving game. He is basically a lock to miss almost a month of the season every year, right? I mean, you look at it, and he's just going to miss a couple of games. Now, he's also going to be a 29-year-old running back this year. He turned 29 a couple days ago. With Benson, why I like him so much is not just all the things he did well in college, which was contact balance, a muscular build where he can kind of take defenders on high. He can kind of catch himself when he gets hit low. I did see a lot of angry running in 2022 that I would have liked to see him carry over to 2023. He's the master of turning a dead play into 3 to 5 yards. I think coaches love that. That'll get him on the field more. The key for him is there is so much more pass game potential than what Florida State utilized him to do. He's a good pass catcher. He's an effective pass catcher. He's dangerous in space. He has reliable hands. And when I talked to him at the Combine, the one thing he was very, very, real about, honest about, he's like, I am going to work so hard on getting everything right in pass protection. Like he is obsessed with being on the field as much as he can. He understands that, and every college back, quite frankly, needs to work on pass pro. Like I can't remember a back, maybe Kyron Williams. Yeah. Kyron Williams is the one where he was coming out, and I was like, damn, he is really polished in pass pro. But Kyron wasn't that big. So the reality is, like, guys are going to run through you at times. So I think that him having that realization while having 4.3 speed, while having the muscular build to run hard and the contact balance, this is a situation where if you take Benson in Dynasty, okay, year one, there's going to be times where it's like, it's a James Conner week again. I feel like Benson, years 2 to 4, is going to be a really good player. I love the direction this offense is going in. You would think they're going to be right in that red zone area often. You would think he's going to get a lot of goal line touches years 2 to 4. And then when James Conner is hurt this year, he's going to be, I would think, in like that RB2 range. Maybe I'm too bullish here, but I really, really like Benson. I thought he had a shot to sneak into round 2. And like you said, yeah, we all would have loved him to go to Dallas, but this is not a bad landing spot.
No, it's not at all. And they're one of the teams that does seem to be fine featuring one back in an age where there's a lot of shared backfields now. The Cardinals are fine just trotting one guy out there and letting him do his thing. So I was really encouraged by that. And the biggest knock that I kept hearing on Trey Benson whenever, because obviously, when you like a guy, you talk about him and you're posting stuff on Twitter and whatnot. And the big thing that always puzzled me was I kept getting this narrative of poor vision, which I never saw.
I agree.
I think the play that everyone kept referencing was that very first or second run against Florida where he was trying to do some hero ball and he turned what should have been like a 1 yard loss or no gain. into like a 7-8 yard loss. And yeah, like it was a bad run. But the rest of his game, he dominated. Like he played fantastic against Florida. So I think sometimes we get fixated on one thing. I had no issue with his vision at all. Some great one cut and go when the hole was there, but he was patient when he needed to be as well. So I had no issue there. The only two other guys that went on day 2, Blake Corum, MarShawn Lloyd. And both of these guys kind of fall into a similar situation where talented running backs that were rated fairly highly amongst the community. I was a little lower on Corum than I think others were. I had MarShawn Lloyd as my third guy. But either way, I mean, both talented players that were older prospects that go into a situation where seemingly they have their established running back. MarShawn Lloyd joins Josh Jacobs. Blake Corum, he joins Kyren Williams. What's your read on these two players in this situation?
Well, they're fascinating, right? Because we're going to really value the guys in front of them highly in fantasy because of more volume, but definitely talent. I mean, Josh Jacobs, and you're not going to deal with Josh Jacobs this year like you did last year where he was late to camp. Was he ready to roll? Like, that's always just this like death stamp on a running back in September and October when they have that kind of offseason or lack of offseason, lack of camp. So Jacobs is going to be really valued in a Green Bay offense that knows how to run the football. Kyren Williams, like, what do I need to say, right? Kyren Williams was one of these stories of fantasy last year. Now, so you look at just face value, you think, okay, these are two of the most desirable rookie handcuffs in all of fantasy. Now, where they differ for me, I had Corum RB6, I had Lloyd RB7. I had third-round grades on both of them. So where they went didn't really shock me. Now, you just wonder with how obsessed McVay is now with this downhill man scheme running attack. He's paid these man-blocking guards a ton of money, and Kyren has been banged up. Is Corum going to start to eat in where they kind of tear at each other? Where, like, I'm obsessed with Corum as this stash of, oh man, like Kyren sprained his ankle. Blake Corum's going to be a top 8 running back in fantasy the next 4 weeks. Like, that's really, really exciting. Valuing him as an actual starter out of the gate is where it gets really convoluted. And I was with you where Corum, I was lower on him as an NFL player while he was a great college player. But of course he went to, like, put on a platter situation, right? He's with one of the best offensive coaches in the league that has completely geared towards the run scheme that he just dominated at in Michigan. So he went to the perfect scheme, a great situation offensively, but he's just got this monster in front of him that why would the Rams get away from Kyren Williams? That's the really hard part to figure out. And then Lloyd is different to me because if Corum's playing...
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Quick question on Corum. It was interesting because before I really dug into his tape, and I found more nuanced differences the more I dug into his tape, specifically in the Pass Pro, but I don't think Corum and Kyren are crazy dissimilar players.
No.
Like, they fit a very similar style and mold. So that's the crazy part. Is like they're almost interchangeable in this offense.
That's
right?
what they're thinking, right? They're like, oh, Kyren Williams is probably going to miss a couple games because we run him 20-plus times every week, and he takes on a ton of contact, and he's not that big. Cool. We have our other Kyren Williams now. Like, this is how NFL coaches think. Well, it'll be interesting transitioning to Lloyd because I think it's the opposite. But Corum I compared to Jaylen Warren, and I could see him being Kyren's Jaylen Warren, where you're like, he's on the field and he just took away like a key touch there. So yeah, that'll be a really interesting one. It's such a good fit for him. Lloyd is a different story to me because I understand why people are excited about Lloyd. I'm more excited about MarShawn Lloyd as an NFL player than a fantasy player. And what I mean by that is he's such a good complement to Jacobs, right? I think he's someone that, you want to talk about Jonathon Brooks' style of like gliding and slicing and making people miss and these sharp cuts. Lloyd can do that. Now, where Lloyd gets kind of tricky in terms of a fantasy perspective is he tore the ACL in 2020. Fine, like he's gotten over that. He missed games in both 2022 and 2023. He never topped 115 carries in college. So if you think MarShawn Lloyd is eventually going to be the guy in Green Bay, even if Josh Jacobs gets hurt, right? Like, even if Jacobs gets hurt, he's never really been that kind of guy. And he's very efficient. He's very productive. He's a really stylistically exciting runner. And he's always been a big-time talent, even back to being a recruit. I mean, just on 115 carries his final college year, 47 missed tackles forced. Like, the talent's really good, but will he ever be able to handle the volume to be this dream scenario? I think he's also a guy that he kind of runs upright at times, or is almost patient when he's upright, and he gets clobbered. Like, you could see why he gets hurt. There's just times where he just gets clobbered. He had 3 fumbles on those 115 attempts. It kind of goes back to my point of him leaving himself exposed. So I really like MarShawn Lloyd as this compliment to Josh Jacobs, this change of pace to Josh Jacobs, but I don't really see him being this, this is my backfield now, I'm just too good. And I'm sure he'll have games where people are like, he will be the guy, I'll tell you right now. He'll have a game where people are like, MarShawn Lloyd is awesome. Like, he needs to be the guy. He needs 18 to 20 carries. But what people on the outside can't see that coaches see, and sometimes coaches are wrong about this, but often they're not, is that they're limiting guys for a reason. And you need to be delicate for MarShawn Lloyd to be that effective. And that's kind of my long-standing take on him that caps him in fantasy.
Well, speaking of...
I've been way too critical on this podcast. I feel like I'm dimming down expectations in a time where everyone's very happy about expectations.
No, you know what? We got to be nitpicky, though.
Yeah, you do.
In order to know who to take and who to not. And I know, people want to come out and, they're just kids. Stop being so mean. Like, yes, but part of our job is to say, we want you to draft player A, not player B, because and you got to be a little picky.
I mean, are running backs going in your rookie drafts right now? Because maybe Brooks sneaks into mine. That's basically it. Like, it's not.
Yeah, in rookie drafts right now, from what I've been seeing, Jonathon Brooks is going somewhere between in Superflex.
Yes.
Somewhere between picks 9 and 11.
Right.
So he sneaks into the first round. Then the next one is Benson. That's usually somewhere between 2-3 and 2-5.
Exactly.
And then you might get Corum maybe at the end of round 2, but then you start to get a run of these guys in round 3 is where we're really seeing it. Yep. But you mentioned a guy being limited on touches potentially, and is that the situation that we have with your running back 2 in the class, Jaylen Wright? We have Devon Achane there, and obviously such an incredible, dynamic rookie season, but another player that was banged up, hurt, a little bit of an undersized running back. Is Jaylen Wright the eventual Mostert replacement, or do we have something else going on here?
I think he's Mostert's replacement, and that's why I couldn't be more excited about getting him at cost, because Miami gave up a decent amount to go back in and get him. A lot of people kind of overlooked that. I forget the exact price, but they gave up a future pick to go get him, where it was like, oh, they really like Jaylen Wright. Now, and if anybody knows running backs, it's Mike McDaniel. So he was the guy behind Kyle Shanahan doing the 49ers run game for years. So now Mostert, 32 years old, they redid his deal this offseason. It's really for this year. Mostert, amazing year last year, amazing story. A guy that before that, literally for 7 or 8 years, always needed to be managed. Like, he's gone with Mike McDaniel everywhere. And McDaniel's known how to manage him. And then last year he has this season where he gets over 200 carries for the first time in his career, over 1,000 yards. Great offense for him. So, is that sustainable? No. It's not. I love Raheem Mostert. I think he's one of the better dudes in the league. You listen to him, he's such a fun dude. You can't be happier for him that he had this breakout year at 31 years old. But Miami knows that they need the next guy. And they know that Devon Achane is not that guy. He's the perfect 1B. You can't run him into the ground. You couldn't do that to him at Texas A&M. You really can't do that to him in the NFL. We saw what happened. He is lethal with the touches you give him. But the reality is, how many guys in the NFL that are sub 190 pounds are getting that workload for a team that wants to run the hell out of the football? So it doesn't mean he's not effective in fantasy, because he's so dynamic every touch he has that he's still effective. But you nailed the setup of that. It's not, can Jaylen Wright find a role in the backfield? It's Jaylen Wright is going to be the future Raheem Mostert. And Raheem Mostert was one of the most valuable, based on ADP, players in all of fantasy last year. So that's why I'm so high on Jaylen Wright, because he is one injury away from in an offense with two extremely injury-prone players in front of him. That is an incredibly well-schemed rushing attack that he is tailor-made for. I think he is such a smart stash if you can find a way to do that with him. The benefits you can reap from him in a year, or maybe this year in November or December, I would personally be really, really excited about. And I think Miami feels like they got a steal.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, I know we don't have time to go through every player, obviously, but after Jaylen Wright, there's a lot of guys who went 4th, 5th. Once you get to the 6th, it gets a little bit more murky. But is there a player or two after Jaylen Wright went that you're like, that's interesting to me, whether it's because of his talent or his situation, but it's just a guy that's like, I'm putting a pin in this one because I want to keep an eye on it.
How about both with Tyrone Tracy? I mean, you look at the free agent situations and you were like, we kind of lost a lot of the fun fantasy running back rooms after free agency. Because like you said, a lot of the guys got paid. Dallas just totally let us down. They didn't do anything like we thought.
Nothing.
Like, imagine if Dallas just took like Braylon Allen or Isaac Garendo somewhere on day 3. All you'd hear about is Braylon Allen or Isaac Garendo. But I rest my case. So the Giants were another team that you look at the backfield, and yes, Dable has a history with Motor Singletary. It's going to be his backfield to lose. But after that, I mean, what are we looking at? And Tracy somehow ends up being the 13th running back taken in this draft in the 5th round. It shocked me. I know I was really high on him. I had him as RB4 in this class because of the pass catching, because of the creativity. I think the Giants are going to get to camp, and they're going to be like, oh, wow, Tyrone Tracy is probably the most talented guy in our backfield. We are going to lean on Singletary out of the gate, but there is no reason in the world that Tracy should not be our 3rd down running back. And then eventually he will be the guy that the fans are right. It's like, why is Tyrone Tracy touching the ball 7 times a game when he does more with those 7 touches than what the other running backs do with 10 to 14? So I'm kind of shocked where I can get him at times. Like, if you just look at Sleeper, you have to like search him and find.
Oh, yeah.
I've taken him really late, and I sit there and smile every time. And it could mean nothing. He could be a penny stock, and it just ends up nothing happening. But I wouldn't bet against Tyrone Tracy. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, I love that you said that. He's one of my favorite. And to go along with the guy that went right before him, Rasheen Ali, really liked Ali's
I'm
take.
with you.
Great situation in Baltimore. A guy that, and Derrick Henry, that obviously is a stud, but he's getting older. He's getting banged up. And after that, there's really nobody else established in that backfield other than Keaton Mitchell, who's coming off the injury and just plays a different role in the offense. So those are 2 of my favorite 4th, 5th round guys to always target. So Connor, thank you so much for hopping in here, man, hanging out with me for a little bit, talking these running backs. Remind the folks real quick where they can find you and anything you want to plug.
So all our rankings are on NFL Stock Exchange on our YouTube channel. We have a podcast feed for that. If you do not quit fantasy football any time of the year, we still are taping Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Me, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher on NBC Sports every Thursday this time of year. During the season, we're 6 days a week. But this time of year, come on. We can get it all in 1 day a week. So you can get your fix there. But Garrett, I always appreciate talking to you, man. I love the work you guys do. I've learned so much about Dynasty from, not only playing in a league with you guys, where I'm begging somebody to take Tyreek Hill from me. I am trying to give him away because I just want to blow up my team, and nobody will take him, but I'm still having fun with it.
Oh, absolutely, man. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you guys for watching this. We've got tons of stuff coming out, some more great interviews, some individual standalone episodes of things. So stay tuned to the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page.